Hi, I'm C. Andrew Nelson, the voice of Luke Skywalker from LucasArts video games, the voice of Kai from Mystic Heroes, and the voice of Inky the Octopus from Between the Lions. You're listening to Voicing Your Talent.
With me, Jacquelyn Liz.
And action.
Hi everyone, welcome to Voicing Your Talent, where I will be interviewing the giants in this crazy industry we call voice acting. Get to know them a little more and their passion for the art of voice acting. I would like to welcome C. Andrew Nelson this evening. Hi! You are extremely well known for many things such as an actor, a voiceover artist, an editor, and an aspiring writer. However, you are best known for a role you played in some low-budget film. What was the role you are most famous for?
Yeah, there was this sort of obscure little science fiction film from the 1970s. You probably never even heard of it. It's called Star Wars. A whole series of these films. Yeah, I spent 12 years playing Darth Vader for Lucasfilm. I played Vader on film, for television, for commercials, print ads, magazine covers, toy packaging, video games. I'm even on a postage stamp as Darth Vader. I thought you had to be dead to be on a postage stamp, but apparently not. So yeah, I landed that role. Obviously, I'm not the original Vader. David Prowse was the original body of Vader, but I spent 12 years inside that big, hot, sweaty costume. Not continuously. I got to go home at night and see my wife and kids, but yeah, I did spend 12 years playing Vader 70 times over 12 years.
That is so cool! You have voiced several characters on TV and video games, all of which we will get to in a minute. But I'd really like to know, how did you get started as a voiceover artist?
I kind of did that through the back door. I mean, I always enjoyed doing voices, even from being a kid. I would, record myself with a cassette recorder. A lot of people don't like to hear the sound of their own voice. Apparently, I'm not one of those people. I don't mind the sound of my own voice. And I've always been fascinated with what I could do with my voice. I grew up, watching Warner Brothers cartoons and was amazed to find out that nearly all the voices were done by Mel Blanc. And who I just thought was just a genius with what he did. And I wanted to do that sort of thing. So I started doing some voice work, or at least a little announcing, when I was in high school, taking a video production class, and then volunteering at my local cable access TV station. Now, nowadays, people don't even know what cable access TV is. It was back in the day, the Federal Communications Commission had mandated that every municipality had to have some way for the public to get their opinions and whatever they wanted to do on the air. Now we have YouTube, so no, that's not required anymore. But back in the day, we had cable access TV stations, and I worked there right out of high school. Even worked with Dana Carvey from Saturday Night Live, who was working there for a while. And it was very much kind of a Wayne's World type of thing. It was a very small studio. But I got to wear a lot of hats and do a lot of things, and one of them was announcing over the air and DJing. And we would, spin records, and I would, DJ. So that's where I first started. But I guess my very first voice gig was doing a corporate instructional video, not even a video, it was just an audio cassette for a company that I was working for, a big international freight forwarding company. Yeah, that was really exciting. As an accounting clerk, because I just needed a job doing something. And when I found out that they were putting together a training tape, I said, I can do that. I can do the voice for that. And I did that. And that's sort of happened throughout my career, as I've sort of stepped up doing that. So my very first character voice was actually the voice of Luke Skywalker. I was working at LucasArts already. I was a visual effects supervisor and senior artist working there at LucasArts, designing a lot of games and doing effects and animation and stuff for the games. But one day, somebody sent out a message through the company email saying, hey, we need somebody to record a scratch track for Luke's voice for a game that we're working on. And I didn't even bother to respond to the email. I just ran straight over to the guy's office and said, hey, I can do that. And so they said, all right. I set up the microphone, and they had me do it. And it was a few lines for a game called Super Empire Strikes Back for the Super NES platform system. And they recorded my voice for Luke just as a placeholder. And then they said, I think we're keeping this. And then I ended up doing Luke's voice for several other games because they had, they thought I did a good job. From there, I did other voices for LucasArts. And then the interesting thing about working for a company like LucasArts is that later on, a lot of the people would leave and start their own companies, and they remember, hey, Andrew does voices. And so then they'd call me up, and that's how I ended up getting into the voice business.
That is very interesting to me. Also exciting. Obviously, you are very great at what you do. You have voiced tons of characters from many video games such as Luke Skywalker for LucasArts, Kai from Mystic Heroes for Koei Games, and Zeus and Skyron from Wrath of the Gods for Luminaria. What are some of the work details that go into voicing a character for a video game?
It's interesting, there's not a big difference as far as like the setup, as far as how you record it or what you do, but there is a difference in the delivery. I mean, what you would do for an animated show or series and what you would do for a video game and what you would do for announcing and everything, your delivery is going to be very different. In fact, I always recommend for people who are putting together demo reels, if they want to get into this sort of thing, is that make a separate demo reel for each thing. Do a separate demo reel for promos and a separate demo reel for game voices and a separate demo reel for animation and everything, because what the producers are looking for is always going to be a little bit different. For the games, the stuff that I was doing for Koei was interesting because it was very much like looping dialogue for a film. And looping just means that I'm dubbing my voice in because they were Japanese games that were already finished and completed, but now we're doing the English language version. So I was providing the English voice for the different characters that I was doing for Mystic Heroes, for the character of Kai, and also the Dynasty Warriors series, doing a lot of different voices for that. So in those cases, you have to not only come up with a voice and be able to read the script, and a lot of times you don't have much heads up on the script. You get a few minutes to look it over, and then you've got to start recording. And for those games, I also had to be aware of the mouth movements because I had to watch a screen and match my dialogue to the movements of the animated characters because it was already a finished game. We were just doing the English language version. So you want to make sure that it sounds good, still matches the movement, and doesn't have weird long pauses in between because you're trying to match the English to the Japanese, phenoms of the animation there. So it was an interesting thing. Other things that I've done, like when I did the voice of Scout the dog for Mortimer and the Riddles of the Medallion at LucasArts, or for Luke, it was fresh. So I would provide the voice first, and then they would animate the character to that. So it's a little bit different. But the basic process is you go into the studio, or the recording booth, you've got a script in front of you, you've hopefully been able to get a chance to read through it a few times and kind of come up with a voice. Hopefully the producers or the casting people will give you an idea of what kind of voice they want you to do. And you give them a little taste of it, and they give you some feedback and saying, I like that, maybe change this a little bit, whatever. For Luke, it was a little bit different because I'm having to match Mark Hamill, or at least as close as I can get to, because this is a character that's already been established, and we know what Luke sounds like. And I was very happily surprised to find that I got a lot of good reviews, and people thought it was actually Mark, a couple of people. So I was very pleased with that.
Who is it?
Package delivery.
Ha ha! Very funny, fellow Mizumian. You think I would fall for that?
Candygram.
I don't eat candy. It upsets my lower quadrant.
Publisher's Clearinghouse.
Really? But I didn't send mine in. Huh?
You alien fools need to watch some more action movies. The bad guys always forget about the ventilation shaft. Hey, your toast must be ready.
Really? I love toast. There's so much you can put on it. Butter, strawberry jam, Mizumian sandwich loaf, cream cheese, peanut butter, kippers.
That is so very interesting to me. How long do scripts like video scripts, as well as cartoon scripts, usually take for you?
It all depends on the project. Some projects, you may have just a couple of lines of dialogue here and there. Other scripts, you might have long passages of things. And so I would love to say that I'm a one-take wonder. I am not a one-take wonder. Hopefully I can get it pretty good by the second or third take, and then sometimes they'll want you to go back and change it. One of the tips that I often give to people who are aspiring voice actors is once that you've done several takes, and they usually have you do several different takes on something, when you get down to the last take and they say, okay, that's good, I think we got enough, sometimes ask them if you can do one more take. Because a lot of times, by the time you get to doing it several times, maybe you're going to be better at the first half of whatever line of dialogue you were saying or whatever speech you were doing than you were, because now you're warmed up and it's going to be a little more natural. So I always try to ask if I can do one more take on it, even after they're satisfied. And a lot of times it actually ends up being the best take. But I'd say, for the stuff that I did for Luke, that was just a couple hours in the studio for each game. For other things like Dynasty Warriors and Mystic Heroes, it took a little longer because we're trying to match those mouth movements. And then other things, when I was doing voices for the PBS Kids TV series Between the Lions, and I was also an animator on there, that took on a whole day to do just one episode's worth of stuff, because you have producers in your ear that are off in Boston somewhere, and I'm in a recording studio in California, and they're speaking to me in through headphones, and they're trying to give me an idea of what they want me to sound like. And they're changing it up here and there, and we say, we really want you to specifically hit this particular word, because that's the word we're showcasing in this, because it was a show about learning how to read through phonics. So it took a little bit longer, but they eventually were very happy with it.
I really like that piece of advice of asking to do an extra take. I'm going to use that. Was the transition from voicing a character from multiple video games to television a smooth crossover? Or are there many differences, especially the work you did on the TV series Between the Lions?
There were some differences. For me, it wasn't that difficult. I guess for me, the hardest part getting used to, moved over to do work on Between the Lions, was the fact that the producers, the people that were giving me my instruction and everything and directing me, were not in the room, not even in the state. They were across the country, and so I wasn't able to see them and everything. So I'm just hearing disembodied voices in my ear. Plus, I'm hearing another voice of the animation director in my ear as well, and he was calling from somewhere else as well. So it was kind of odd. There's all these voices in my head as I'm trying to take a voice and get it out of my head into the recording. So that was different. But as far as doing characters, I don't think it was. The process is the same of coming up with the character. Assuming you've got enough time to read through the script, and you just kind of think, okay, well, here's what the character looks like. They usually give you an idea of what the character looks like, or either verbally, or they'll show you. In my case, they were actually able to show me some images of what the characters looked like, both in the games and on Between the Lions. And so I was able to make the transition pretty well. The hard part was just it seemed that I had to do a lot more takes with the stuff for Between the Lions. And it was interesting because, what I love about doing voices for games and animation and everything is that you can be anything. Doesn't matter what you look like. Doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are. You can be anything. Doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter how you look either, because I have looked a fool in that recording booth, trying to get the voice. Contorting yourself, doing whatever it is to get that voice to come out and create this character. But for an example, when I was working on Between the Lions, I was doing a voice for a character called Inky the Octopus, who was a surfer dude octopus. This is what they described to me. They said, okay, so he's a surfer dude, but he's an octopus, but he's a surfer dude. So you got to have that surfer dude vibe in there. Okay, all right. And in this episode, he's going to be doing country western music. So you got to have that twang, that country western twang in there. But don't lose that surfer dude vibe. And remember, you're an octopus. What does that mean? Remember, you're an octopus. So you put all that stuff together, and you got to come up with this character. And eventually I did. And so it took a few takes, a few tries.
Hi, Gus. I'm glad I reached you. Guess what I'm doing right now?
I don't know. Dribbling 8 basketballs?
No!
Knitting 4 sweaters?
Stop! Ink's gonna come out of my nose! No, I'm polishing up my saddle. Do you know why?
I don't think so.
I'm spending the weekend at the Lone Starfish Dude Ranch.
Sweet. Is that the place where you get to ride on seahorses and rope words and stuff?
Yep. I'd love it if you'd join me. It'd be a whole lot of fun. What do you say, partner?
It's fun. It's what I love. I've done all kinds of different acting. I started off on stage and theater, and then transitioned into film and commercials and television and everything. And video games on camera as well in games. But my favorite acting is voice acting, because it's the theater of the mind. You can be anything. You can be anywhere. It's this big wide open canvas, and you can play a lot of different characters, and it's fun.
Such wonderful advice you're giving us. I love that. You said doing voiceovers we could be anything. I also love that about voice acting. Thank you very much. What does it take to be a successful voiceover artist? What skills are required?
Well-placed bribes. No. I think the biggest thing, because I get this a lot, because I am very blessed from being able to from having done all these things with the Star Wars franchise and working at LucasArts and Industrial Light and Magic and working for Lucasfilm and Disney and everything. I get invited to be a guest at conventions, at collectibles conventions and fandom conventions and science fiction conventions all over the place, and it's a wonderful, wonderful blessing to be able to do that. But invariably, I get people that come up to see me at these conventions, and they'll say, "Oh, you're a voice actor. Well, I do funny voices too." And I'm thinking, "Oh dear gosh, don't do your SpongeBob. Please don't do your SpongeBob." "Oh, yeah, that's a nice SpongeBob. Great." The trick is, the advice I always give people is that, remember, it's voice acting. You've got to be able to act. You've got to be able to study acting first. Even if you're doing straight announcing and narration, you need to be able to read with intention. You need to be able to create a feeling in the audience. You have to elicit an emotion from them, whatever it is, whether you're trying to get them to buy the latest Mazda car or if you're a country western singing surfer dude octopus. You've got to create some kind of emotion in the audience. So I always say you need to take acting lessons. It's really important. The other thing is you need to learn how to cold read. It's a tough thing. I was not good at it for a long time, and that's basically cold reading means you're handed a script, you've got a few minutes to take a look at it, look it over, and then you got to read with intention and read it well into the microphone. And you get good at it just by practicing. And I tell people, just pick up a magazine, pick up a book while you're walking around the house and just start reading out loud. Learn how to scan ahead several words so that you know what the rest of the sentence is when you start the first part of the sentence as you're speaking out loud, and read it with intention. The other thing I would tell people is that I think a really important skill is know your instrument, know your voice, know the limitations of it, know the boundaries of it, know what it can do, and don't stress your voice out, but stretch your voice. See what you can do with it, and get used to the sound of your own voice. Yes, I like to hear myself talk, but at the same time, I know that I'm learning what I can do with my voice. You don't have to have the ability to do a myriad of different voices. Some people can do thousands of voices. Billy West, who I know he's a great guy and an amazing talent, and he can do so many different voices. He's probably best known as the voice of Ren and Stimpy and Fry from Futurama, and Billy's fantastic. He puts the rest of us to shame sometimes. But then there are other people like Gilbert Gottfried, who's got that one voice, and he does that one voice for every character, but he makes different characters with that one voice. Mm-hmm. And that's the important thing, because he's an actor. So know your instrument, get used to the sound of your own voice, and then also just get out there and get your voice where people can hear it. Get it in front of ears so that people can hear it. And network, and then build up a body of stuff, and then of course you have to have a good demo reel. I'm fairly lazy in that sense because I haven't done a demo reel in a long time because I have friends that keep hiring me, but I really do need to do a demo reel and myself a new one, several of them, because like I said, you have to have one for each type of discipline. There's no one size fits all with demo reels.
Okay. Getting your voice in the door to voice a major role in the voiceover business can be difficult to land. Any advice on how to stand out? Or what should one study?
I would say that just try to get work and build up a body of work so that you can show people what you can do. A lot of it is networking. Some of it is once you've got a body of work and you've got a good demo reel, then you can get an agent that can help you with that. Don't rely on the agent to get you all the gigs. They're usually there to help you negotiate once you've got the gigs, but they will also send you out for roles. But don't do it before you're ready. But at the same time, don't think I've got to be perfect before I get out there. Perfection is the enemy of progress. It truly is. And I know so many people are saying, I've been working on my demo reel. How long have you been working on it? About a year and a half. And it's like, well, gee, you could have been out there doing stuff a year and a half ago. But you also kind of have to be fearless. You have to realize that in many cases, if you know that you have talent in this area, and you know your instrument, and you're pretty comfortable with what you're doing, and you've gotten good, solid critique from people that you can trust, not like, your mom and dad. It's like, oh, my baby's so wonderful. Listen to her, SpongeBob. That's wonderful. You don't want that. You want people who will give you an honest critique of your skills and work. Once you have all that in place, you got to kind of be fearless. You have to be able to realize that you're going to get a gig or you're not going to get a gig, and it may have nothing to do with your particular skills. They're not saying, oh, you're wonderful, you're fabulous, you're the greatest thing, we've been waiting all our lives for you to walk into our studio, and they're not going to say, you're the worst thing ever, you're completely talentless, get out of here, you hack. That's not going to happen. It's basically you get a gig, and this is the same thing for being on camera or on stage or wherever as well, is they're going to say, all right, you fit what we're looking for, or you don't fit what we're looking for. So you just have to keep at it. You're going to knock on a lot of doors, and you're going to get a lot of people saying no, but eventually you get a yes. And it may be a yes that leads to a yes that leads to where you want to go, those big roles and everything. Or it may be a yes that takes you much further than you ever expected to go. You just don't know, so you just have to keep up with it. As the line goes from a film that I worked on the visual effects for, because that's the other half of my career, the visual effects, is from Galaxy Quest, never give up, never surrender. You can't. You just can't give up. You just have to keep going with it.
What projects are you currently working on?
I am working on a couple of projects for Theme Parkology, which is wonderful. Jerry Cornell from Theme Parkology, my buddy, has tapped me to do some voice work. We're doing an audio documentary for the Disney theme park attraction Adventure Through Inner Space. And I will be doing the narration for that as the voice of Professor Hugo Small. So I get to do a sort of an homage to Paul Frees, who was the voice of was the narrator for the original attraction. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm also, with Jerry, developing a animated series. We can't quite talk about it yet. If we get that up and running, I will be doing voices for that as well. One other project that I'm going to be working on for Theme Parkology is I'm going to be editing the documentary for the 1964-65 New York World's Fair, which is a very cool project because that was a watershed moment for Disney and the Disney parks, because Walt was involved in the creation of 4 pavilions at the World's Fair that year that then became attractions at the Disney park, at Disneyland. So it was It's a Small World and the Carousel of Progress and Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln and something that was called Magic Skyways that ended up in Disneyland in 2 different ways, which is very cool. So I'm going to be editing that. I loved editing the documentary that Theme Parkology did for Pirates of the Caribbean, and so now I get a chance to work on this one. So I'm very excited about that. Then some other projects that I'm working on, a film that if it gets greenlit, I will be the visual effects supervisor for, that I'm right now consulting on, which is, I can't talk about it yet, but it's a very interesting project that's going to recreate Hollywood of the 1940s, 1930s, 1940s, 1950s. And my role is to figure out how to do this in such a subtle way that nobody realizes we did anything. So people will go, hey, I didn't know that building was still there. Well, it's not still there, but we brought it back. So it'll be an interesting project. I can say a little bit about it. It's about the life of Ray Crash Corrigan, who was this wonderful stuntman and actor for many years in Hollywood. He doubled for all the big stars, Clark Gable and everybody, and knew all these people. And he has this amazing story that's never been told before. And so consulting on that project. I've got some books in the work, some other little projects. But one thing that I'm doing that I kind of fell into doing is I have a YouTube channel called Aquatasy, Aquatasy, which is all about tropical fish, because that's the hobby that keeps me from going bonkers. You know, because it's a crazy business. When you're working in film or television or games or animation or whatever it is, at any given moment, it feels like there's a multi-million-dollar production sitting on your shoulders waiting for you to get your part of it done. That's how it feels. The reality of it is. There really is a multi-million-dollar production sitting on your shoulders waiting for you to get your part of it done. And that's a lot of pressure. So I chill out by having fish tanks. I've been keeping fish tanks since I was a kid. Well, I accidentally fell into having a YouTube channel about that. I was on an online forum trying to get some information about a particular fish species, and all the people there on the forum were like, hey, let's all post videos of our tanks. I said, all right, I'll join in. But me being the visual effects artist and editor and animator and all that, I can't just get out the cell phone and shoot something and upload it. Oh, no, I've got to edit it and add titles to it and music and graphics. I went completely overboard. And then I was looking for somewhere to host the video, and I figured, well, YouTube seems easy, but you have to create a channel for yourself. So I thought, well, I better give the channel a name. Well, if I'm going to give the channel a name, I better make sure I've got a URL that can go with it. And it just started to snowball from there. So I posted that first video, put it on there on YouTube, put the link on the forum, and everybody was like, dude, that's great. You should do another one. So I did another one. The channel now has over 12,000 subscribers. I am over 1 million views now, and it's amazing for a fish tank channel. But it's Darth Vader's fish tank channel. But I have sassy back-talking fish, and they're awful. You don't have to live with them. I do. And I incorporate effects and animation and voiceover, and it's all the things that I love to do all in one place. So it's kind of fun. So if people want to check that out, they can go to Aquadacy on YouTube.
That all sounds very interesting. Looking forward to watching these finished projects of yours. How does an inspiring voiceover artist such as myself land their one union-rated job to become SAG-AFTRA without being in the union yet?
Yeah, it used to be easier for voiceover because the union that covered voiceover work was AFTRA, the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, and it was an open union, whereas Screen Actors Guild was a closed union. You had to qualify for membership. With AFTRA, you just had to pony up the money, and I forgot how many, like $2,000 or whatever it was at the time, and you could be in. But then the two unions merged, and so now, yes, you have to. It's all under sort of the Screen Actors Guild requirements. So it gets tough. Basically, there are a couple of ways you could do it. You could, if you want to do the kind of the sneaky trick way is you can do it on camera. You could get cast in as a background extra in something, and hopefully they put you in as a SAG actor because they didn't. And this is how my wife got into the Screen Actors Guild union, was that they needed some extras in a scene for a film, and they didn't have enough union extras, and so they did something called a Taft-Hartley, which is sort of a waiver that allows them to use a non-union person in a union role, and you get 3 of those Taft-Hartleys, and you're eligible to join the union. So that's one way of doing it. And then, I guess the biggest way on the voice side of things is that you build up enough work, people like your work, that to the point where it's like, you're so good, we want to hire you for this union gig, even though you're not union yet. And that's what happens. And so, I got into SAG-AFTRA because of my leanings on the dark side. I was about halfway through a commercial I was doing for Taco Bell as Darth Vader. I qualified for union status, and that's how it worked. But I think rather than concentrating, how do I get into the union? How do I get in the union? Just concentrate on doing good work, getting your work out there, getting more people to take notice of you and pay attention to you, and just start getting booked. And the more you get booked and the more gigs that you do, then the closer you're going to get to that as you do it. And then there's a lot of work that is non-union that is really cool as well. I mean, don't just think, well, that's the be all end all. The nice thing about working if you're union is that when you do get paid, you get paid well, because there's union minimums and things like that, and you get residuals and that sort of thing. But you may not work as often. When you're non-union, you may work a lot more often, and you can do a lot more different little gigs that are, smaller productions and things like that. But you probably won't get the residuals and everything. So you have to kind of balance it out and figure out, what your goal is. I wouldn't always be thinking about the brass ring. As you climb the tower to your goal, be aware of each step rather than always looking at the top of the stairway, because if you keep looking at the top of the stairway, you might trip on one of the steps that you're on.
That is some great advice. Thank you. And in closing, any advice for those who dream one day to land a voiceover role for a major character?
Yeah, I would say take your dreams and turn them into goals. You have to take everything and make it actionable. If you keep thinking, oh, one day I want to do this, like one day I want to do a voice for Pixar, that one day is never going to come. You've got to say, rather than one day I want to do this, you have to say to yourself, what are the steps that I need to take to get me closer to that? And then set those down in writing. There's the old expression of write the vision and make it plain, so that you know where you're going to go and what is involved in getting there. And ask lots of people and meet people. If you see somebody like me or my friend Phil Lamar or somebody at a convention who does voice work, pick their brains. Go ask questions, and don't be worried about whether or not they've answered that same question over and over again because 100 people asked them that. That means 100 people got an answer and you didn't if you don't ask. So when people like me or others, Billy West and Phil Lamar and all these others, Tara Strong, when they're at these conventions or they're doing a lecture somewhere, don't be afraid to ask questions. And don't do your SpongeBob for them. Please don't do your SpongeBob impression for them. But you just have to take the dream and turn it into a goal and figure out the steps that will get you where you want to go there. And believe me, I'm still doing that. Everybody's still doing that. You'll talk to people, and you're always going to be trying to hone your craft. You're always going to be trying to improve something. Even well-established voice actors are going into the studio every so often and cutting a new demo. And find out the resources. There are some great resources out there. There's some wonderful YouTube channels as well that you can go to. VO Buzz Weekly is a great YouTube channel that will give you a lot of pointers and tips. It's fantastic. There's books out there that you can look at. There's a great book called Voiceover Voice Actor that I recommend that everybody read. And you can find it on Amazon. You can find it on maybe even the library. Who knows? But fill your head with knowledge. Come up with actionable steps to get to your goal, and don't just sit on it, because if you keep doing one day is never going to come. So, Jacquelyn, I'm going to ask you, because I know you've done voice work, and I've heard your voice work, and it's good. What inspired you to want to do voice work?
Well, for me, basically, it was just, I've always seen YouTube videos of, like, conventions and stuff like that. I've always been the anime, like, fan of everything, and I've thought to myself, maybe I could start doing this, because I've seen them. They're like, oh, it could be easy if you have like a lot of emotions and you're great at acting and stuff like that. So, and then from there, I saw a little icon on this one website and did my first thing. I let my mom listen to it and my dad. And they said, she's really good. And from there, I got training, and that's how I became a voiceover artist myself.
Were there any, once you started doing voice work, were there anything that you found out about it that you didn't expect? Like, okay, I thought it was going to be this way, but it ended up being like that. What was it that surprised you about doing voice work?
Basically, that's a really tough question. Basically, what surprised me is how much direction there is. Like, certain tones they have to listen to, and certain accents. They either want this accent or that accent, just like direction, basically.
Yeah, there's a lot of direction. You'll get that. I would tell you, I would much rather have lots of direction than no direction. I don't like to be floundering and just wondering, okay, am I doing a good job? And people just go, okay, yeah, that's good. And it's like, no, tell me what to do here. How can I improve this? Am I delivering exactly what you need? And was there anything about your voice that you learned that, as I was saying, you got to learn your instrument. You got to know your instrument. Was there anything that you found out about your voice that, like, limitations that you didn't know you had, or things that you were able to do with it that you didn't know you could do?
A lot of, like, British accents, like higher pitched children's British accents, I've come to realize that I can do, and certain tones and different things that I can do with my voice. Limits, I kind of know I have limits, but not many that I haven't seen yet or heard yet.
That's good. Well, I think what you do is good. I mean, I heard you in Dark Park, and I thought you were fantastic. I really did.
Guys? Turn around. There's like a whole mess of zombies right there.
Player 2 attack upgrade chainsaw now active. Still at 100% life.
I think you brought that character to life. I was talking earlier about how you have to solicit an emotion out of an audience, and you really did. You got that. You tugged at my heartstrings listening to that. So, but you brought up a good point about being able to do different accents and things like that. It's not necessary as a voice actor, but I think it is though important if you can do that. It's another little tool in your arsenal to be able to do that. Of course, the trick is you got to make sure that you're doing a proper one and not an Americanized version of it. If you live in America or if you're in elsewhere in doing another voice, it's interesting to me that there are a lot of British actors who can do a very good American accent, and not as many American actors that can do a British accent. And I don't know if it's the schooling is different as far as acting is concerned or what. Where did you actually pick up your dialects that you were doing? How did you come up with them? How did you discover them? So I know how I discovered mine when doing British accents. How about you?
So my mom would watch British television, and I kind of just sorted to copy them to where I can sound like I'm British myself. And from there, I kind of just like made it a little bit more stronger to where I can sound like this.
That's actually quite good. And that's exactly what happened to me. I grew up watching British television, lots of sitcoms and British movies and everything. I was quite the Anglophile, growing up watching that. And that's where I picked up those things. I also have the incredibly bad habit of, if I'm around somebody with an interesting dialect, I start to mimic it without realizing I'm doing it, which can be quite embarrassing in public. But anyway, so that's very, very good.
Where can other voice actors as well as people can find you on social media?
Because voice actors aren't people, we know that. No, that's fun. I'm just having fun with you. Yeah, people can find me and voice actors and anybody else, any extraterrestrials or any crawling living creature can find me at candrewnelson.com. That's my official website there. You can also find me on Facebook. I am C. Andrew Nelson on Facebook. I think I'm the only C. Andrew Nelson on Facebook. I'm also C. Andrew Nelson on Instagram. And on Twitter, I am C_Andrew_Nelson, because there's some guy in Australia who's got it without the underscores. He's not using it, and he won't give it up. And then if you want to find me on YouTube, like I said, I am Aquaticy on YouTube.
Cut. That's a wrap.
Thanks for listening to Voicing Your Talent with Jacquelyn Liz. Voicing Your Talent is part of the Theme Parkology Network. Interviews were arranged by and for Theme Parkology. Voicing Your Talent is strictly a fan publication. Please visit us at themeparkology.com for more information. Follow Jacquelyn Liz on Facebook.com/blessedwithavoice and Instagram.com/voicingyourtalent. All character voices, trademarks, product names, company names, and logos mentioned are the property of their respective owners. All opinions stated within do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Theme Parkology or any other production company. Don't forget to subscribe to Voicing Your Talent on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast platform. By subscribing, you'll get a notification as soon as our latest episode drops. While you're at it, please rate us with a 5-star review. This will help other fans find our show. Just like Jacquelyn says, we are all blessed with a voice.